Being an actor is quite often extremely difficult work, and there are instances where the work nearly breaks the actor. It could be due to an extreme number of takes, bizarre script decisions, or uncalled for aggression, both physical and verbal.
Here's Johnny!
Thankfully, these actors powered through it and were able to finish their work. Let's break the list down. The Shining was back in the headlines in 2019 due to the critical acclaim of Dr. Sleep. Sadly, not many people went to see that gem of a movie, but it did make us think back on the Stanley Kubrick classic and the impact it had on actress Shelley Duvall. Duvall, of course, played Wendy in The Shining, the wife to Jack Nicholson's character, who was also named Jack. Nicholson would go on to state that Duvall's experience on The Shining was one of the hardest jobs he's ever seen an actor undertake.
I'm very confused.
Due to the amount of crying that was required of her character, she ended up with extreme exhaustion and dehydration as a result, and even began losing some of her hair by the final days of production.
I pulled hunks of hair out on the windowsill.
There's a scene in the movie where Wendy uses a bat to fend off Jack that has a Guinness World Record for the most takes needed to complete a scene, with Kubrick demanding the actors to do that bit 127 times. No wonder Duvall was on edge. We're not sure a breakdown like that is worth the paycheck. Who's everyone's least favorite Avenger? It's no fault of his own, but the answer to that question almost all of the time is Hawkeye.
I'm out of arrows.
What?
In the first Avengers movie, which was his first real appearance outside of the cameo in the Thor movie, he spent most of it under the control of Loki due to the Mind Stone in the scepter. This didn't sit well with Renner, who didn't want fans' early impressions of the character to be a false version of him. Renner felt the same way towards himself, stating he was only just learning who Hawkeye was, and then it was undone. He ended up being super depressed, spending his time as a brainless zombie for most of the movie, and his flat, one-dimensional character really took him out of the experience. In fact, it was so bad that he ended up begging the producers to axe Hawkeye in the movie so he wouldn't have to come back for more movies. He, of course, didn't get his wish and came back for future outings as Hawkeye. Amazingly though, he ended up winning a small legion of fans who were actually bummed about his absence in Infinity War. Brad Pitt is one of the biggest and most celebrated actors of his generation. Despite being a leading man, he has no problem taking smaller roles in movies if he believes the role is worthy. However, with the benefit of hindsight, he may not say that his experience on Interview with the Vampire was a worthy role. If you've ever seen the movie or seen what Brad Pitt looks like in the movie, you might say to yourself that he looks depressed, which suits the character just fine, but that wasn't acting. That was Brad Pitt's mood for most of the production. In an interview, he stated that shooting in the night constantly, wearing uncomfortable contacts, the rainy London location, and playing a weak and pouty character caused him to loathe the production. In fact, he wanted out and approached producer David Geffen about buying out his contract. Geffen informed him the buyout would cost around $40 million. So, needless to say, Pitt carried on and the film would open more doors for him, leading him to his first Oscar nomination the following year with 12 Monkeys. So, probably a good call sticking it out. There are bad days at work for everyone, but for Carl Weathers, this may have been the worst day at work ever. While working on the fourth Rocky movie, Weathers almost quit the franchise entirely due to Dolph Lundgren, who played Ivan Drago in the movie.
I must break you.
While it may have looked real, boxing in the movies is, of course, fake to protect the actors from any potential injury. But one day, it got a little too real for Weathers' liking when Lundgren threw him across the ring. We guess Lundgren got a little too into the role of Ivan on that day and wanted to be him for real. Weathers did not take kindly to this and stormed off the set, citing he was quitting, which halted productions for a total of 4 days. After begging and pleading over the course of that period, leading man Sylvester Stallone finally convinced Apollo Creed himself to return to the ring so the movie could continue production. Thankfully, he did, because the events of Rocky IV directly set up the Creed movies. The Fast and Furious has surprised audiences and fans everywhere by becoming one of the most popular and profitable franchises on the market. Didn't see that one coming in 2001, and likely Michelle Rodriguez didn't either, as the tough-as-nails actress almost quit the first movie. The reason as to why Rodriguez almost left the production was due to how her character Letty was originally written. In the earlier drafts of the movie, Letty was actually going to betray Dom and fall in love with Brian, the undercover FBI agent in their midst. Rodriguez felt this made no sense, as Letty, the toughest-nails racer, and in her own words, stated that Letty would clearly prefer the alpha-est of alpha males in Vin Diesel's Dom and not a pretty boy like Paul Walker's Brian. Rodriguez was adamant about having this aspect of the movie changed and threatened to quit if it wasn't changed. Thankfully for all parties involved, the scripts got changed and Letty remained faithful to Dom in the first movie and for the rest of the franchise, even going as far as getting married to Dom in the later movies. Zoe Salanda is a household name these days, thanks largely to her roles in the Star Trek reboot as Uhura, Guardians of the Galaxy as Gamora, and yes, even Avatar as Neytiri. But before she became one of the biggest actors working today, she had a very tiny role in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and that experience almost put her off acting altogether. Salanda played Anna Maria, a minor character in the movie.
Anna Maria.
Salanda didn't have any influence at the time and was basically a struggling actor launching her career. Because of her lowly rank, she was treated very poorly by the crew. On the call sheet, she was a number as opposed to being a person, and the upper echelons would belittle her constantly and treat her with no respect, as they didn't see her as a person, but rather a talking prop. She felt demoralized and didn't want to work in an industry that was that elitist and cruel towards the smaller parts of a movie. But she carried on and is now one of the most successful actors working today. Jake Gyllenhaal is a respected and beloved actor.
Now that is an Avengers level threat.
Capable of doing big blockbuster films and serious dramas. It was one of those dramas that nearly broke the actor, and the cause of so much stress was due to the director of the production. ZODIAC is a 2007 film directed by David Fincher, and after his latest feature film, Panic Room, Fincher elected to try a new directing method, one that puts more attention on the actors. Being the lead actor in the 1970s set film, it was Gyllenhaal that ended up being in Fincher's newfound crosshairs. Adopting a method that sounds similar to Stanley Kubrick, Fincher went full perfectionist mode on ZODIAC, asking the actors to do scenes over and over again. Gyllenhaal stated in an interview that Fincher asked him to do one scene over 70 times and another one 90 times. Plus, digital filmmaking was a relatively recent method at that point, and as such, Fincher was discovering the joy of deleting takes on the fly, as opposed to saving them for the cutting room. This caused undue stress and fatigue for Gyllenhaal in particular, as those retakes were often directed at him as he was the lead. Wayne's World, party time, excellent! Well, things almost weren't so excellent for Mike Myers, who played the titular character Wayne. Myers portrayed the character in various SNL shorts and was excited to be doing a full feature film with the character and his co-star Dana Carvey. One of the most famous parts of the whole movie is actually the opening, which is set to Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. Myers was adamant that the song is used in the movie, only this scene almost never happened, as the studio thought Bohemian Rhapsody was too expensive for the movie and pushed to use a Guns N' Roses track instead. Myers nearly walked off the movie when he learned this. Considering Myers had already played Wayne on SNL, he was irreplaceable and got his way in the end, and the rest is history. In fact, Myers got to reference the scene in question in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, where his character stated that the song would never be appealing to be listened to in cars by kids banging their heads.
Bohemian Rhapsody will never be that song.
We see what you did there, Mike. When fans learned they were going back to Middle-earth, things got pretty excited pretty quickly. We can only imagine that Ian McKellen felt the same way when he was cast yet again as Gandalf the Grey.
Although you don't remember, I belong to it. I'm Gandalf.
But upon returning to Middle-earth, things got a little rough for the veteran actor. Unlike the first trilogy, The Hobbit would be a special effects heavy experience and would be experimenting with high frame rates and 3D. Whereas the Lord of the Rings films used camera trickery and doubles to allow the hobbits to come to life, The Hobbit would use green screen technology to achieve this. This meant that McKellen was acting alone in green screen rooms for most of the production, while his Hobbit counterparts were in another room. The two shots would then be merged together thanks to the green screen backgrounds. This was an act that caused the acclaimed actor to break down on set so badly that director Peter Jackson had to create a Gandalf Appreciation Day to give McKellen a morale boost, decorating places with the Lord of the Rings trinkets from the production. The gesture must have worked as McKellen refocused and went back to work, despite being uncomfortably out of his element. Daisy Ridley got her big break from her debut role in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Talk about going from unknown to megastar overnight. But despite this guaranteed career launcher, Ridley almost ended backing out of the role, which could have had dire consequences on her career. Due to being an unknown and tossed into the lion's den on her first day, Ridley had a lot of pressure to deliver a compelling relaunch to the Star Wars franchise as the first female lead in the series. Her first day of filming was in the middle of the desert at the outpost in Jakku, and she began to feel in over her head. Ridley felt like she was a nobody, unworthy of the job, that there must have been some kind of mistake in the casting choice. This reflected on her acting, to which director J.J. Abrams had to help with remedying by giving her a note with some directions on it. Abrams' feedback to Ridley was that her acting felt wooden, and combined with the pressures of a billion-dollar franchise relaunch, she almost quit right then and there after nearly having a panic attack as a result of the feedback. She eventually went back to work and fixed her mindset and was able to deliver the movie. Do you think any of them should have taken the bullet and quit, or are they all better people for sticking around? What would get you to leave a production if you were an actor in Hollywood? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching.